So like I said, the game itself actually has two separate stories, the one that was originally intended and the one that it became. Perhaps because the original intent of the game wasn't what it ended up becoming. And Scott has confirmed what we know of Fnaf to have been right at a time. So what was the original story of the first Five Nights at Freddy's game? Well, in a Steam post talking about the games, Scott said, "You know, when I released the first game over a year ago, I was amazed at how quickly everyone found every bit of lore and story. And if we go over the previous theories on Reddit and YouTube, like MadPat's videos, we come up with the following. Before the events of 1987, 5 kids go missing when an employee dressed as an animatronic lures them to a back room and kills them. The killer hides 4 of the kids in the animatronics of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy while moving the 5th to another location or stuffing it into Golden Freddy. Keep in mind that at this point we're only looking at FNAF 1, so the kids don't have names yet. The killer then gets caught and convicted, but the bodies are never found, despite the suits leaking mucus and blood and smelling like rotting bodies. Then in 1987, an animatronic bites someone, removing their frontal lobe, which only causes more bad press for the company. Then a previous night guard known to us as Phone Guy starts recording his messages to train the one who would come after, potentially because he was thinking of switching professions or retiring. However, his retirement comes sooner than he expected when he gets killed by the animatronics while hiding out in a back room. Mike is then hired at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza as a night guard to watch over the animatronics, where he spends 7 nights, gets paid, but also fired for smelling and tampering with the animatronics, even though he had been given the memo of Employee of the Month just a couple days before. And that's where the original story ended, full of mystery and general confusion, which only made the series more popular as a whole. But before we get into anything further, let me just say thank you for clicking on this video. If you love the FNAF series as much as we do and want to see more videos like this, plus we have a FNAF lore playlist as well that's more focused on the theories and the confirmed bits of lore. Both of those are linked in the icon in the top right corner of your screen, so click it. You won't be disappointed. Then comes the next game, and the rest of the series, which expanded on the first game in such a way that made most of what we just said just fanfiction, but like canon fanfiction, you know? Since we know so much more now and the pieces fit together so much nicer, even if you have to bash them in with a hammer. So what is the current story of the first Five Nights game? Well, we'll go into it based on general theories, but I'll throw in some options in there as we go. Remember, we're looking at the story of the first game here, so details like the FNAF 2 location and circus babies are irrelevant, but will be explored in future videos if you guys like this one. Before the game starts, William Afton, working as a suit technician dressed as Golden Bonnie, lures 5 kids one at a time to the back room of a Freddy's restaurant and kills them, stuffing the bodies of Gabriel, Susie, Fritz, Jeremy, and Cassidy into the suits of Freddy, Chica, Foxy, Bonnie, and Golden Freddy, where their intense agony from being killed and ruthlessly shoved into animatronics allows them to possess the endoskeletons of their new coffins. William is suspected of a crime and investigated, but no bodies are found, so the charges are dropped, since they have no proof of foul play or any wrong part in his doing. This event, that becomes known as the Missing Children's Incident, ends up costing the company business and bad press. Then the situation gets worse when, in 1987, someone gets bit and loses their frontal lobe, which puts the company in dire straits. Then the player, known as Mike Schmidt, is hired as the security guard and notified via newspaper, the ones that are represented by the ones we see on the walls in game, and not by the company, that the restaurant will be closing at the end of the week. But as we would later learn, since we are the son of the man who committed those murders so long ago, we stay for the week and risk our life to try and set these 5 spirits free. We stay for 5 nights, unable to help. Then a couple nights later, we're fired for tampering with the animatronics, general unprofessionalism, and odor, most likely to prevent the company from having to pay a bigger severance package when the company goes under. The animatronics are retired, and our father continues to get away with the murder. It's also possible that instead of Michael, we play as Henry, William's business partner and at least previously part owner of the restaurants, the father of Charlotte, who is only mentioned in the books, not the games. As a victim of one of these crimes ourselves, we set out on the mission to help those that we could and scare William along the way, using the name of one of his victims, Mike Schmidt, as an alias to be hired as the security guard. He then tries setting the souls free, but is caught, and the issue is brought up to William, who, upon seeing the name, knows that Henry is after him. So he orders that he be fired as quickly as possible and with as many reasons as possible to ensure that Henry can't fight it. Thus the additions of general unprofessionalism and odor, which are honestly not entirely valid reasons. This gives William the idea to dismantle them himself, which he tries to do, hiding in the safe room after each disassembly, but that ultimately fails, having the spirits appear in their child form, causing him to go into the spring lock suit to feel power powerful, but getting spring-locked in the process. Then Henry, as the copyright owner, uses his position to seal off the safe rooms, trapping William inside for the next 30 years. But what happens next?
When it comes to Sister Location, one of the greatest mysteries still seemingly left unsolved is why we are here. Why are we, as the player, playing, we assume as Michael Afton, codenamed here Eggs Benedict, at the Sister Location? At Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental. I know what you're thinking, but Amanda, we kinda already know. We're here to free Elizabeth's soul at William's behest. But while that is the theory, it is still technically just that. A theory. While there is some evidence to back up that theory, it still remains to be largely unconfirmed. I think the struggle to accept this theory and the evidence supporting it as, actual fact for me is because, well, it just doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like, as soon as you think about it, you're like, wait, but what? Like, there are a lot of questions I need answered first before I can just accept that somehow Michael was sent there by William. First of all, if Michael was sent there by William for this sole purpose, pun completely intended here, then why didn't William seem to tell Michael about Circus Baby being the supposed housing unit for Elizabeth's soul? Why does that seem to be information Michael also learns during the game? Even if we were to think, well, hey, maybe Michael did know, and the exposition was actually more for us, the player, who didn't know the full story. Why wouldn't Baby recognize Michael as her brother? Why does that never happen? Is he wearing a disguise? And if Michael did know, why didn't he do something sooner? Why is it never brought up? Why did he just blatantly trust Baby? Was it because he knew that this was his sister and his sister was, maybe a part of her was still somewhere in there, and so he felt, oh, she's pretty trustworthy because, a part of Elizabeth might be guiding her, I don't know. What was Michael's plan anyways if his intention the whole time was to free Elizabeth's soul? Because to be honest, it doesn't seem, doing his job, that he really had much of a plan here at all. Second of all, if Michael was approached by William to, go to Circus Baby's Entertainment and Rental, how did William even reach out to him? Why did Michael just do what he said? How did that conversation even go, if that was a conversation? My son. Oh, hi Dad. Wait, Dad, shouldn't you be dead or something? And also, didn't you murder a bunch of people? Yes. Right, okay, Dad, but I have a lot more. Can't stay, must go, ta-ta! What even would that conversation be? It's breaking my brain to think about it. Did William just send Michael some mysterious letter and Michael opened it up and he was like, okay, I guess I'm going to this place now. Who's this letter from? Is it from my dad? Is he a murderer? Why would Michael even trust that? I have more questions than answers when it comes to just the premise of this game. Yet somehow, despite all of that, it still has maybe one of the best stories of all the games that we have. Even though when we start to obviously pick apart what's going on, there's so much left unexplained that really just it does not make too much sense. And friends, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, be sure to click that like if you want to hear more conversations where I pretend to be Michael and William and tell you what those conversations are like, or maybe, I don't know, William and Elizabeth. I feel like those ones would be pretty weird too. Case and point, the whole opening of this game, which I love, but also, what is happening here? It seems like Afton is being interrogated by the police about his animatronics. Chiefly, the one they seem to be discussing here is Circus Baby. The police basically tell Afton there's some features of the animatronic that they don't fully understand. Now, William responds by seemingly listing off all of her various impressive family-friendly features in a British accent too, which creates some more smaller, admittedly, mysteries in regards to the Afton's family origins, but we don't have time for that right now. The police, however, respond by saying these were not the features they wanted to talk about. Which did they want to talk about though? They don't say that. You could consider it might be I don't know, her ability to kill people, because that's a thing that we know from this game. But then that would technically be the ice cream dispenser, I think, wouldn't it? I think. Which Afton actually did point out, so in his defense, he kind of covered it. Unless they didn't realize that Elizabeth had been scooped by an ice cream scoop, which is I think what's kind of happening to her. Also, if this is after that incident and Elizabeth is, as we've assumed, Afton's daughter, why does he sound so calm during this entire interview? If this isn't the feature they're talking about, then Also, why aren't they talking about this? Because that's the feature. Like, someone was likely just scooped. I mean, I feel like you could, I guess you wouldn't see that because Elizabeth kind of gets like pulled inside, but I don't know. The other feature, it could be the emergency stop, I suppose, which we know from the schematics, from the blueprints, but while that is an interesting feature, it seems more like a safety feature than anything. Also, why didn't we activate the emergency stop? Like, why was that never done? So I don't see why it would be concerning to anyone investigating animatronic attacks, because that's actually like, I feel like a pretty good feature. Now, it wasn't used, unless it was and it just didn't work, I don't know. Once we get into the game, there are even more mysteries for us to puzzle out. It seems like Circus Baby's entertainment and rental has fallen into a state of disrepair, which makes us wonder when the game exactly takes place. I mean, obviously things are still running here, hand unit is still online, lights and buttons are still working, still flashing, but also a super interesting but small detail that I've always found fascinating is that the vent that we first used to crawl into the main workspace has actually a bunch of tape over it that reads danger. I actually wonder if the facility may be below where the actual Circus Baby Pizza World was, and that after the incident that took place in the restaurant, which obviously resulted in Elizabeth's death, it was perhaps also shut down. So, you know, we're venturing into this sister location following it perhaps being closed, which is what the danger tape is maybe meant to symbolize, that it's, you know, closed down now. However, it is interesting that the tape reads danger and not, you know, crime scene, which you would think. Other evidence that seems to suggest, without it being explicitly stated, that we are actually working at Circus Baby's entertainment and rental following its closure is that, you know, we never actually see a paycheck, which wouldn't be super suspicious, except that in the first game we're like all about those paychecks, baby, and they're weirdly low dollar amounts. Though granted, those weirdly low amounts were helpful because they actually allowed us to get a sense for when the game was actually set. With Sister Location, we do not get that. And it also calls into question whether or not we're actually working a paid shift for, you know, a company that exists, or mostly just coming around each night to, you know, just like investigate this place after, you know, it's already been shut down and abandoned because we're just looking for Elizabeth's soul. I know what some of you might be thinking in regards to it being abandoned, but what about the other workers who are mentioned and who we see the bodies of? Well, you know, those could actually be fake bodies which are strung up to scare us by the animatronics, or they could very well be bodies of employees that were just left there to rot, because I would believe it. I'm not saying we came to this place years after it was shut down. I'm not saying, because, you know, I don't think these look like skeletons. I mean, this could be a few months after. Where Sister Location honestly is meant to fit on this timeline has always seemed extremely mysterious and elusive to me. I'm like, when, what is this timeline anyways? It's less of a line and more of like a bundle of yarn at this point that's all knotted up. Another thing that I've never quite understood from a functionality and accessibility standpoint is why we crawl around in the vents. Why is there not just like a back room or something that we can just, you know, use, that we could go to access these areas? I mean, from a business standpoint, it makes your job a lot more accessible if you have that, because, you know, not everyone is the right size to crawl through vents, and some people have mobility disabilities that don't allow them to crawl at all. Granted, I know why we crawl around the vents from a video game standpoint, because, you know, it's a heck of a lot more creepy than just like walking through a back room. And it's also, you know, more work to create an entire room versus a vent, I imagine, as a game designer. But still, there isn't much that helps us to make sense of this from like a narrative standpoint. From a business standpoint, it makes no sense. There are many other things that call into question what is really going on in this game and what everything means, what it really means. Did William intentionally put Elizabeth in harm's way, or was that an accident? Now, if it was an accident, why did he ever even bring her anywhere near Circus Baby at all, if he knew the animatronic wasn't safe? If the police had him, why did they let him go? What is the immortal and the restless really meant to represent? How do we get scooped and still live at the end of this game? What does that mean? Is this even Michael in the game? I think it is, but it could be, is it an animatronic version of Michael? Who is Mrs. Afton? Is there a Mrs. Afton? Is Ballora Mrs. Afton? Why do we all love Ballora? Because she's a ballerina? Why are we all attracted to ballerina animatronic? What does Ballora's sad song mean? And of course, we still don't know why William Afton murders people. Why? Even after this game. The 5th game in the franchise. Whew. Really, what's confusing the most though is why we are here and what the heck we're doing, and if it's even what we have all been theorizing, because after all, it's just that, a theory, a FNAF theory. I answered none of the questions, but I did a good job, I think, of highlighting them and how they relate to the story, so you're welcome.
And be sure you stick around until the end for some bloopers, because I'm not good at talking. Scott said in a post on Steam that MatPat did an excellent job on his FNAF 2 theory, getting almost everything right. And since now we know that some of these things are wrong, we can figure out what he got right. Out of the things MatPat proposed, a few things have been disproven, such as the killer, Purple Guy or William Afton, using a golden Freddy suit. We know that he uses Golden Bonnie now, and that the phone guy being the Purple Guy was confirmed to be false in Ultimate Custom Night with his temporary mechanic for April 1st. So with that, what is the true story of Five Nights at Freddy's 2? After the missing children's incident where 5 kids got killed at the hands of William Afton using the Golden Bonnie spring-lock suit, the original Freddy Fazbear's location gets closed down, for the reasons we see in the FNAF 1 newspaper clippings. This is also the location where Charlotte, William's business partner Henry's daughter, is killed outside the restaurant, despite the security puppet keeping an eye on her. We see this location in the Take Cake minigame that features the puppet jump scare, as well as the security puppet minigame from FNAF 6. After some time, 3 years to be exact, in 1987, the company opens a new location with an updated look and roster, with toy animatronics fitted with facial recognition and a criminal database programmed by their technician, part owner William Afton. That's not gonna end poorly at all. The place reopens at a huge celebration with a new night guard, Jeremy Fitzgerald, taking up the night shift. However, after a week on the job, he gets his frontal lobe bitten by Mangle or Toy Chica, as suggested by our Ultimate Custom Night Deathline, and after his recovery, he is promoted to the day shift, leaving Fritz Smith as the new night guard, who gets fired after day 1 for tampering with the animatronics and his odor, leaving the animatronics as the only defense against the Purple Guy. They obviously just fail in their job because the killer is the one who programmed them. So, he's not gonna program it himself. Like, how stupid do you think he is? This dude is like a genius. He's not gonna program himself into a database to identify killers. No. Resulting in another group of murders that we can see in the various minigames. The night guard known as Fritz Smith seems to be connected to the night guard Mike Schmidt from FNAF 1 because of their similar firing reasons, meaning that this is probably the start of his unwinding scheme, whoever this ends up being, since he gets caught on day 1. Like I said last time, it's possible that this is Michael, but could also be Henry. We know that Henry's daughter had already been killed thanks to the Take Cake minigame, and that he was already worried about her safety since he had specifically programmed the puppet to protect her. So he has motive as well. But what about age? This is where it gets confusing, because we don't know Michael's age. He appears to be a teenager in FNAF 4, which takes place in 1983, and FNAF 2 takes place in 1987, meaning that he may be realistically able to be a night guard. But we can't quite be sure, since most of the time it requires a license, and it can vary from state to state, and the individual needs to at least be 18 in most cases, which Michael most likely is, but I'm still not sure. And I'm sure a place that has had murders before would want someone with more experience than the newly 18-year-old son of the CEO. And William wouldn't want Michael close to anything that has to do with his murder spree. The other possibility is Henry, which would also make sense given that his daughter was killed by William, and now Henry would be looking for revenge, using the names of William's 5 original victims to scare him, hence the whole Mike Schmidt and Fritz Smith. This is probably more realistic since he would be older and certainly be able to forge a resume to say he had experience, but since nothing has been confirmed, it depends on how you want to look at the series. Eventually, this location closes as well thanks to the new killings after only weeks of being open. Yay! The toy animatronics get scrapped for being just horrible at detecting a literal kid killer, and the older, withered ones are put into storage and repaired for a new smaller scale location which opens later, thus starting FNAF 1, where Michael will definitely be old enough to be the night guard, but I still don't know if he is. It's up in the air still. I need confirmation, Scott. Just like, please, just throw me a single bone. One bone is all I need. Just throw it to me and I'll be fine. Now, there is something else that I would like to address. While reading up on old theories for this video, I kept seeing everyone using the odor line as confirmation that we play as Michael Afton. And while yes, if Michael was a rotting corpse at the end of Sister Location, that would make sense, we can't really use this as evidence. For one, I still don't believe that he is rotting. He just appears to be bruising all over, caused by Ennard constantly beating him from the inside, because, you know, those aren't his normal bones. And because, like, he would literally be a zombie at that point. I don't think that's where the series is going. But also, Sister Location takes place after FNAF 2, since in the end scene we see a burnt down Fazbear Fright, which opens in 2023. So this game has to at least take place in 2023 for that cutscene to make sense, meaning that Michael wouldn't have smelled bad during the first 2 games. There also has to be another reason for the odor that's on the pink slips. This is probably just honestly due to fear, because you're sweating profusely after narrowly escaping your death because of hyped up animatronics. Or it could just be that William is making up reasons for getting someone he knows is after him fired, or he just didn't, or someone else didn't like Fritz. It's entirely possible. And at 10, losing kids. This seems to be the most popular theory about why William Afton started his whole killing spree thing, because seemingly he didn't kill anyone until after Elizabeth and Crying Child died at the hands of the various animatronics. But there are those who also treat this as a proven fact. But honestly, this is proven to not be the case, okay? It is impossible for William to be a psychotic killer because his kids died. As we learned from FNAF AR's Faz Facts, William made the Funtime animatronics around the same time as the Springlock animatronics. So, from day one, he made the robots that were intended to kill. Plus, if you want to ignore FNAF AR's Faz Facts entirely, the fact that Elizabeth and Crying Child got killed by animatronics that were designed to kill, hence why they were killed by them, even disproves that idea before FNAF AR. So, while it would make sense, it's not truly the case. And some of these other explanations may end up making more sense. Although, to be frank, I don't think that anyone actually knows the real origin, not even Scott Cawthon. And at 9, divorce. Another popular reason is possibly because William's wife left him, and that drove him crazy. I mean, being a single dad to 3 kids would already be pretty tough, but maybe this idea goes beyond this. A lot of people also assume that William killed his wife, considering how she's not around, and nobody really ever mentions her. This honestly could be an option, but only because we know so little about the home life that William had before the games, or even before 1983 when we see the Sister Location 8-bit scenes. So theories about this are entirely plausible, even if they just rely on human nature rather than evidence present within the games. I mean, these are human characters after all. They don't have as much meat to them as the theories involving info from the games or even from the books, but it's still interesting to see the possibilities like this. And like, did William get divorced? Was his wife his first victim? Who knows? Probably not even Scott. Honestly, I doubt William's motivation is something that like he thought of when he was throwing out the last game, when he thought that the game would end up failing. Yet here we are, 9 games and like 8 years later, almost. And it ain't Phone Guy. Hold on, okay, hold on. Hear me out. I think that there is still the possibility, slight chance that despite what Scott might have said, that the Phone Guy could still be the killer. Now, this is probably almost definitely not the case. This is a list about speculating, right? Well, what if William is indeed the one recording these training tapes, and what we hear is what we see play out in FNAF 3's minigames? I mean, we thought that this was possible before, but then when they gave him a name, we figured that they were different people. But maybe they also gave us Phone Guy's name without us knowing it. I mean, what other reason would he have to be an Ultimate Custom Night? Unless the Vengeful Spirit heard the recordings and knew what Phone Guy sounded like? Plus, the animatronics bashing on the door could just be when William goes to disassemble them, which accidentally releases their spirits. But the tape's cut off before he ends up getting spring locked. Because, like, I don't know about you, but if I saw the ghosts of my victims, I wouldn't think like, oh, I need to vlog this. We have 2 different versions of Afton in Ultimate Custom Night already, so maybe there is a secret 3rd version, aside from the one we play as at least. And at 7, accident. Now, aside from me, maybe this whole deal was an accident, right? Maybe more so than just his kids getting killed by robots intended to kill. Maybe William's real first victim wasn't Charlotte. Maybe he did kill his wife, but accidentally. Maybe they were a bit too rough, or maybe she had a condition that made her susceptible to falling or something, and William accidentally tripped her. Maybe When that happened, in whatever way it did, William saw the life leave her eyes and liked it, but then wanted to see how it would look on a kid. So he set about making robots that would help him see it. But his kids got instead. But then he still liked the sight of it so much that he continued. Maybe he wasn't built like it, but the sight of watching someone die, maybe even his wife or lover, awakened something deep within him that then propelled him to kill. It's nothing new, it's happened to plenty of people before, but William is dangerous. He knows how to cover his tracks. Despite the absolute buffoonery of his methods, the cops were none the wiser. Or maybe he was just paying them off. In at 6, Demon Deal. This may be because my brain is watching too much Supernatural, but the possibility does exist that in a world with possession, living corpses, sentient biological code that can possess animatronics and people, and where spirits can possess people to keep them alive to suffer, that there is in fact also a hell and demons. And if there are demons, maybe this is why William is absolutely god insane. Maybe he sold his soul to a demon so that his business would be successful. However, so that the Reaper wouldn't come to collect, William decided to start making sacrifices. Or maybe it was demanded of him as part of his deal or something. Maybe the demon he sold his soul to wanted a little snack every once in a while, you know, some baby back ribs. Or maybe, due to this deal, he seeked out getting possessed by a vengeful spirit so that he wouldn't actually be able to be sent to hell. Or maybe that was only a theory, but he was willing to try anything in order to keep himself from eternal damnation. Just an idea. I mean, it's definitely unlikely, probably like 99% not the case, but it's still interesting. Halfway through in at number 5, meta theory. Now, honestly, this isn't possible, not even in the slightest, unless Scott had some seriously messed up story in mind. But my meta theory is just because I want a chance to yell in this video. And to be frank, this would be my serial killer origin if I was Afton, okay? What if somehow, some way, William ended up seeing the Fnaf Rule 34 art that's online, specifically about his various forms, particularly Springtrap. I mean, that would be pretty blasphemous if I'm honest. And time travel does exist in the FNAF universe thanks to Into the Pit. So in theory, Afton could have gone to the future and seen the absurd Springtrap fan art and then gone back and had been so flabbergasted and traumatized from seeing himself lubing up Troll Tower that he went nuts and started killing the people responsible for his horrific perversion of his life. Whether it be specific people that did that or just the demographic that would grow up to then do that, okay? It could have just been the ships as well, like seeing himself shipped with the likes of animatronics that his kids end up possessing would certainly cause me to lash out. So yeah, not possible in the slightest, but funny as hell to think about, and frankly, understandable. In at 4, sacrifice. Maybe this isn't about fan art or a demon deal at all. Maybe Afton is just a religious man who worships the old gods, more specifically, the dark ones, and believes, like some ancient cultures, that sacrifice is the key to a peaceful and long life. I mean, in the end, if this is the case, he wasn't wrong. His misdeeds end up getting him possessed, which allows him to live for much longer than he should have without food or water, after being spring-locked for 30 years, and through multiple fires. I mean, if this is his motivation, this would absolutely make sense to him and actually to him be proven true. Like, maybe he doesn't know that his body is being possessed, at least until Ultimate Custom Night when the vengeful spirit reveals himself. Maybe until that point he genuinely thought that he was being kept alive by the gods. Hell, maybe even after the one you should not have killed reveals himself, he's still thinking that it's one of the gods instead of one of his victims. Crazy people believe crazy things, right? So who knows? Maybe Afton just thinks he's doing the Dark Lord's bidding in exchange for eternal life, or maybe an end to his suffering after losing his wife, or something like that, okay? There are many explanations, although I doubt that this one is very likely. I still like talking about it. It's fun to explore. Getting close to the end, and in number 3, dream theory. There is also the possibility that none of this was real, and that everything is actually a dream, which kind of negates the whole origin story thing, because in a dream, we don't need to worry about origin stories. We just worry about what's happening in the present moment. I mean, dreaming about yourself having a nightmare is a whole other level of meta, like Inception style, but also not really, because in this scenario, Crying Child would actually be dreaming about dreaming, whereas in Inception, they don't know that any of those dreams are actually dreams. It's also interesting since if Crying Child is dreaming all of this, he dreams that he also died, but then somehow the dream continues past that, which I've never had happen before. If I die in a dream, I wake up, which in my opinion makes more of a case for him being the vengeful spirit, but I don't like dream theory because it feels cheap, so I'm not even going to entertain the thought of it any more than I have to. If dream theory is correct, which seems to be no longer the case, but maybe it was intended beforehand, then the origin of William is totally obsolete, so let's hope it's not dream theory. But ultimately, in at number 2, time loop. Could Afton be stuck in a Groundhog Day like scenario? Instead of a day, it's however many years. I mean, this one is absolutely wild and 100% 100% guaranteed not to be the case. But ever since time travel was introduced into the series, it's a whole other thing now. Literally, the first Fazbear Frights book had to do us like that. Anyway, what if William actually started living his life on repeat, the same thing over and over? That would drive anyone crazy. I mean, like, just look at what happened to Bill Murray. But if we ended up thinking about it, if William didn't think that there were consequences and then he went berserk, maybe he started offing people because he could, but then the cycle broke. It's absolutely ridiculous, and again, 100% not the case, but it's pretty interesting to consider. I mean, the time traveling ball pit had the golden Bonnie and was introduced for a reason, right? Maybe it's to show that Afton is all about time travel or something along those lines. Again, no way this is real, so don't yell at me in the comments. It's a stupid idea, but it's fun to think about nonetheless. And finally, in at number 1, psychopath. There's also the classic reason that there is no reason, and that William is just your typical run-of-the-mill psychopath who has no remorse for any of his actions. Now, the vengeful spirit, referred to as the one you should not have killed, seems to prevent this theory from being true, since if he had no remorse, nobody would be considered the one you should not have killed. But remember that actually, they named themselves. William didn't actually name them because the manifestations in his head were made by this vengeful spirit who wanted him to suffer. So William might not have considered them, whether it be Cassidy or Crying Child, one that he should not have killed, or at least had a hand in killing, but they could have considered it and like, you shouldn't have killed me because now I'm possessing you. Like, it's entirely plausible that William has no regrets for any of his actions, hence why he continued his killing after losing 2 out of his 3 children to it. I mean, like, he even sent Michael down there to see his sister possessing a robot who then also tried to kill him. So, I think it's safe to say that he probably doesn't care about losing people that he should love. He probably only had kids to actually seem normal, like those who are considered psychopaths or more commonly sociopaths. They do things to try and fit in, usually. Fazbear Frights opens in the year 2023, 30 years after the last Fazbear joint closes. It closed thanks to a series of tragic incidents where multiple kids were lured away and killed by a man in a golden Bonnie costume in 1985. The killings happened most likely in the safe room of the original building, and the intense agony suffered by Susie, Gabriel, Fritz, Jeremy, and Cassidy allows them to possess the animatronics of Chica, Freddy, Foxy, Bonnie, and Golden Freddy respectively. After the purple guy figures out the animatronics are possessed, in an attempt to save himself, he disassembles the animatronics, hiding in the secret safe room to protect himself since the animatronics don't know what's there. However, by doing this, he unknowingly releases the spirits of the missing children, and in their spectral or ghostly forms, they go after him. This catches William off guard, obviously, and causes him to panic. In an effort to make himself more confident or scare the children, he rushes into his signature spring Bonnie suit. However, the spring locks are susceptible to water, and the room has leaks in the ceiling. So instead of helping him, this, coupled with his hesitation, has the spring lock mechanisms that hold back the robotic parts of the suit fail and snap shut. This causes William to collapse and start jittering and convulsing in pain as a ton of metal parts pierce through his body, but it doesn't kill him, thanks to the spirit of another victim possessing him, keeping William alive so that he has to suffer through this horrible fate, which we learn in The Man in Room 1280. A story from Fazbear Frights, ironically. Fast forward to 30 years later, in 2023, where the secret rooms have been unblocked and forgotten with time, until someone, presumably a third-party group, buys the building and finds the room with the still living William Afton in a Bonnie suit inside. Unknowing of the danger, the group decides to release the cool animatronic and changes the original Freddy's into a horror-themed joint with Springtrap as the main attraction. Little did they know, this was a horrible idea. This then leads to the events of the game, where they hire you as the new Night Guard. And as the Night Guard, presumably Michael Afton, now that he would have definitely be of age, you survive 6 nights and watch the place burn at the end of the week. However, thanks to some form of black magic or the like, you find clues and play mini games to eventually release the souls of the original 5 animatronics, thus letting Gabriel, Susie, Fritz, and Jeremy move on. But not Cassidy. She has more important things to attend to, leaving 4 less souls for you to set free on your journey. The fire, most likely started by Henry, supposedly burned Springtrap alive, killing him and burning any remnant that would have been made thanks to the agony of, burning alive. But we all know this isn't the case, thanks to the final scene from Sister Location. This also eggs me to bring up a point. What are the minigames? Because we know that they can't exactly be real, but we need them in order to press the tiles on the wall to access the other secret mini games. And how do we see these clues if these are meant to be flashbacks to 1985 to 1987? I don't know. Let me know your theories down below. I feel like I should try to come up with a theory on that actually, because that's a really good question. How do we see these mini games? How are we able to interact with them enough to cause good endings, or is it all just symbolic? But how would it have gone if this was the end of Five Nights? What if the Springtrap jump scare satisfied the community and there was no 4th, 5th, or even 8th game? Well, then it would be a different story. If FNAF 3 was the end, we would probably be playing as Henry instead of Michael, given that Henry had a personal stake in this since his daughter was also a victim. And this was probably intended since we can see the puppet appear on the cameras on rare occasions. Since we know from the FNAF 2 minigames that the one killed outside of the Freddy's restaurant turned into the puppet thanks to the jump scare at the end. And MatPat saying that and then Scott basically confirming it. Was the Silver Eyes out at this point? If the Silver Eyes was out at this point, then we would have probably guessed that it would have been Charlotte. But the souls of Gabriel, Jeremy, Fritz, Susie, and Cassidy would have been released, and because there's no need to hold a grudge if it's the end of the story. And William would have burned to death in the Fazbear Frights fire, no doubt started by Henry at the end of the game. The puppet would have also been caught in the fire, hence why it was there to begin with, to make sure that we didn't have any loose ends. And the story would have concluded in a nice, neat little bow. No illusion discs that emit high-frequency noises to alter what you see, no nightmare animatronics, no Fun Times or Circus Baby and Ballora, no pizzeria simulator, no VR game, no glitch trap, no Fazbear Frights books, and no soft reboot of the series in the VR game.